Fantasy readers have incredibly high expectations for world building, magic systems, and how you handle beloved tropes. My name is Zara Hoffman, I'm the founder of Inimitable Books, and today I'm going to be talking about how to deliver on those expectations. Fantasy writers can get so caught up in their world building or making magic work conveniently for their plot that they are forgetting about the tropes that are necessary to satisfy readers, or they are going too heavy-handed. You need to have complex world building, but not so complex that readers lose track of the characters and what matters in the story. Fantasy is not a single genre. It is an umbrella genre with different subgenres which each have different expectations. Epic and high fantasy are large-scale conflict stories normally affecting kingdoms or fantastical worlds. There's normally complex storytelling, political intrigue, sometimes multiple points of view, and it is often part of a series. High fantasy can refer to the type of world, and epic fantasy can refer to the scope of the stakes, which will become relevant when I discuss some other types of fantasy, but they are often thought of as interchangeable within publishing, so be aware that if you see something saying high fantasy, it also probably means that it's epic fantasy. Then you have dark fantasy, which is sometimes called grimdark. It normally has morally gray characters, it is grittier, more violent, sometimes has horror elements, complicated ethics and hard choices, and sometimes a subversion of traditional fantasy tropes. There is often evil triumphing over heroes more than the other way around. That is expected in the hero's journey. This is not to say that epic fantasy or high fantasy can't have dark moments, but the darkness is what defines dark fantasy. Then you have urban fantasy. As the name implies, you need to have urban elements. This normally means that your story is going to take place in a city. It has magic integrated or hidden from the modern world. This is a huge element in the paranormal genre as well. So sometimes people confuse or conflate urban fantasy with paranormal, but it is depending on how you treat the fantastical creatures. If you are doing vampires that are more like Twilight, or even how Dracula has been made sexy over the years, then that would be paranormal. Then you have low fantasy. Magic still exists, and it can exist in the real world or an invented world, but the level of magic is not as intense as the previous subgenres I've been describing so far. Cozy fantasy is low stakes, comfort focused, not as much life or death, and is often more of a small D&D side quest type of vibe. You can read Legends and Lattes if you are trying to figure out what cozy fantasy. Then you have fantasy romance, which is a subgenre of the romance genre, although people are often calling it romantasy, as if romantasy is a subgenre of fantasy. These are normally epic and high fantasy novels where romance is integral to the story. Some people argue that the romance outweighs the fantasy building, while other people argue that no, they're 50-50, or in order to be romantasy, it actually has to be slightly more fantasy than romance. I think that if someone calls your book romantasy, you as the author are the one who knows best whether or not that rings true. Here at Inimitable Books, we have published paranormal romance books and some fantasy books with romance in them, and I do not believe any of them count as romantasy based on what other romantasy readers and fans would want, so to tag any of them as romantasy would be misleading. Let's talk about magic systems. There are hard magic systems and soft magic systems, but all magic systems need to have rules on what the magic can and cannot do, who can use it and why, is it learned, is it inherited, and what are the limitations. How explicitly you say that within the story is what makes it a hard magic system or a soft magic system. So in the Earthsea Cycle by Ursula K. Le Guin or other hard magic system worlds, it is very clear what the protagonist can and cannot do, but in a soft magic system, the rules of the magic normally come up when they are relevant, and they serve more as the atmosphere and aren't necessarily explained as clearly. Think of the Chronicles of Narnia. Both forms work, but you need to establish internal consistency, and breaking them just because it's convenient for plot is a no. The cost of magic is crucial. If there is no limitation or no price for magic, it becomes a plot device that can easily solve any problem and removes all tension in your story. So you want the cost to be significant enough that characters think twice about using magic all the time, even when it would solve their immediate problem. If they have to take time to learn more complicated spells, that's great. If it drains life force, that's another great consequence. If it requires materials or certain time elements or celestial thing, whatever it is, give your magic systems limitations so that your story does not become super convenient for your characters to make it through from point A to point B. You just have to remember that unlimited power is boring, but magic with limits is interesting. In our video about showing versus telling, I talk about what should be summarized and what should be shown. And with world building, you tend to want to show what's happening. But you also don't want to tell too much, especially all at once, which would fall into info dumping. You don't want paragraphs of history or explaining the mechanics of magic or things that the characters already know just so that the reader can understand something. Fantasy readers want immersive world building, so that means they need to discover it through the story, not as if it's an encyclopedia. And we also have a video all about world building, so you can watch more of that. So you can watch that video after this one. But the best fantasy novels make you feel like you're visiting a real place where you're gradually learning how things work rather than reading a travel guide. And you can always use character ignorance as a reader proxy, but you don't want to do that all the time because that will get annoying. Let's talk about tropes. We have chosen one, prophecy, quests, found family, orphan protagonists, ultimate evil, magic, artifact. You can think of a lot of stories by me just saying those words, and many of those stories combine them. Combining tropes in unexpected ways is a great way to tell a story, as is subverting them, but you don't want to subvert tropes just to subvert them, and you should not be mocking tropes within your book unless it is a satirical fantasy book, because otherwise you're going to piss off the readers who happen to enjoy those tropes. The chosen one trope works because readers enjoy watching someone special discover their power and try to save the world. Found family tropes work because readers love seeing characters find belonging. The way to make those unique is to have unique characters, and we have multiple videos about how to create interesting characters. I will leave those linked down below. But I don't think you should be worrying about tropes in the first draft. You need to write your story, and you will probably automatically be pulling in tropes that you might not explicitly be thinking of. You need to do what works for your story and then worry about editing and refining it so that it is not too cliche at later stages in the revision process. I mentioned scope and stakes multiple times in the different subgenres. You don't want to mismatch them. If you are writing an epic fantasy, the stakes need to justify the scope, the same way that if you are writing a cozy fantasy, you don't want the stakes to be so epic that you have mistakenly written an epic fantasy instead of a cozy one. And in order to get people to care about larger stakes, readers have to care about the characters that are being affected. So even if you are writing a sprawling epic fantasy, you need to give your readers characters they can latch on to. Even though you are writing fantasy where readers assume that there will be fantasy elements, they need to feel integrated and earned in the story. You don't want them to magically pop up when it is convenient, the same way you don't want in a mystery a clue to suddenly appear right before the big reveal because it suddenly needs to be there. Integrate it into the world, make it immersive, and have it be useful but not so easy for your characters to access unlimited power. In evaluating your own fantasy novel, ask yourself these questions. Does your magic system have a clear cost or limitation? What can it do and can't do? Is the world building integrated into the story rather than info dumped on your reader? Are you using tropes effectively and deliberately? Write down what fresh angle you're bringing to each trope or how you're subverting it. Do the stakes in your story match your story's scope? Is it proportional to the type of fantasy subgenre you're writing? Do fantasy elements create drama rather than eliminating it? Like I said, if they have unlimited magic to eliminate all obstacles, that ruins the tension and suspense you need to keep a plot moving for the duration of a whole novel. Fantasy readers are hungry for immersive worlds and well-crafted magic. If you give them that with real limitations and costs that have them invested in what your characters are going to do and what calls they're going to make, then you will eventually have devoted fans. If this video helped you, I talk more about the importance of knowing your genre when it comes to writing and submission process in the Inimitable Writing Community's Query Ready course, which also comes Q&As with me, sometimes with guest hosts, and a 72-page course workbook, which walks you through not just how to write a query letter, but also how to write a synopsis, how to revise your manuscript, and more. Let me know what your favorite fantasy subgenre is, and until next time, thanks for watching. I'll see you in the next video.